She get it in town. I think she got hers at instructions over for reason. But there are different places.
You might be interested in supporting some.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. I'd like to call to order this Planning and Development meeting of Monday, May the 6th. You have an agenda in front of you. Is there any additions from staff on the agenda?
None from staff, Your Worship.
Thank you. Council, do you have any additions to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Any disclosure of interest by council? Great, thank you. Just before we get into the items on the agenda, I see we have our new planning department person here, Scott. Scott, if you wanted to stand up there, thank you for coming and welcome to Salmon Arm. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
All right. So our first item is item 5.1, Development Variance Permit Application number VP 496, 2171 14th Avenue Southeast, a retaining wall and fence variance. We have a motion that will go on the screen here in just a minute. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Eliason. Second, Councillor Flynn. Could I have the CEO please read the motion?
Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that the Development and Planning Services Committee recommends to Council that VP 496 be authorized for issuance for Lot 15, Plan EPP 71301 to vary zoning bylaw 2303 as follows. Increase the maximum height of a retaining wall and fence from 2 to 4.12 meters.
Thank you. Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. This is a development variance permit application for a property located at 2171 14th Avenue Southeast in the new subdivision directly south of Hillcrest School. This is an aerial photo from 2016 before subdivision was underway just a few years ago. And now the subdivision is well under construction. This is looking at the house from Hillcrest School up the bank. So it is this house right here on 14th, and the variance is to increase the maximum height of a fence and retaining wall. The maximum height in the zoning bylaw for a fence and retaining wall is 2 meters. The proposed height is 4.12 meters. There's some diagrams in your agenda which show, well, there's a sketch of the retaining wall with the fence on top. This corner of the property is where it has the greatest slope, I guess you could say. And so the owners wanted to build up the backyard to be level with the house. And this is a common occurrence with new subdivisions in hillside areas. And it's common when we don't have a detailed lot grading plan at the subdivision stage showing the finished grades of all the properties. So we're going to see more and more of these. The applicant, Rudy Heidi, was invited to the meeting.
Good morning. Is the applicant here?
It doesn't look like it.
Okay. I'll open it up to council, see if council has any questions for staff. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to staff. How long ago did we bring in our hillside development bylaws? Or
In 2016, we adopted the new subdivision servicing bylaw with hillside development provisions in that bylaw.
right, but we've never changed the height for hillside development specifically for things like retaining walls and fences, because you said this is going to happen more often as we go up the hills, and I'm just wondering if there should be some discussion around changes to retaining walls because of the hillside development growing, and then we don't have to deal with them by variances, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Director of Development Services?
There should be discussion on that.
Okay.
And, but also it's really up to the developer at the subdivision stage to provide that level of detail to us. And often that is kind of fought with,
Okay.
resistance, I guess. Detailed lot grading plans showing finished grades where retaining walls will be built, how high those walls will be. Having the walls actually built at the pre-subdivision stage, that is what we need, and that's going to be expensive.
It's in the real world then, when people are developing a subdivision like this, you're saying that it would be better for all of us if we knew exactly how each lot was going to sit. But the reality, does that ever happen?
The closest we came to that, I'm trying to think. Buyer's View, no. Council saw some variances last year for a similar situation on Buyer's View. And since Buyer's View, and I use Buyer's View as an example because that was the first big subdivision that came in right at the time our new servicing bylaw was adopted. I believe this subdivision was in the works just before that. But we do have another big one coming in the vicinity of Buyer's View, and we are going to be asking for that level of detail at the subdivision stage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director of Engineering and Public Works?
Your Worship, I'd just like to add a little comment to what the Director of Development Services had said about the grading plans. We do require grading plans at the subdivision stage. A lot of times these retaining walls come after because of, as Kevin mentioned, they want flat yards or whatever. So the grading plans are designed so that water doesn't cross over the boundaries of the property lines and that it's managed properly along the subdivisions. So those are a requirement of the Subdivision Development Services bylaw. The retaining walls are sometimes an afterthought, but in developments like Park Hill and Canoe, those again will require a little more detail than just the grading plan.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that information. And regardless of whether it's a grading plan or not, it doesn't mean that we're not going to see variances for retaining walls in the end. Any other questions from council? Could we just look at Appendix 5 just for a minute? I said a query about it. So the retaining wall and the fence on the house on the left-hand side, how does that compare with the one that's going to be built on the right-hand side as far as height goes?
It will be very similar, and the one on the left installed what you see there without a permit.
That was my next question. Is there a variance on the one on the left?
No.
Okay. Is there a setback for retaining walls from property lines?
They can be built right along the property line,
Okay.
to a maximum height of 2 meters.
Okay. All right. I personally don't see a problem, knowing that area pretty well, with the variance that's being requested. So I'll support moving it onto council. Any other questions? All those in favor? Thank you. We'll go to item 5.2. Proposed telecommunications facility referral, cellular tower installation, Rogers Dental and Wireless, 320 Alexander Street Northeast. We have a proposed motion. We have a mover and a seconder. Well, Councillor Wallace-Richmond moves, Councillor Cannon second. Thank you. I'll have the CEO read the motion.
Moved by Councillor Wallace-Richmond, seconded by Councillor Cannon, that the Development and Planning Services Committee recommends to Council that the City of Salmon Arm has been notified regarding the proposed installation of a telecommunications facility on Lot 1, Plan 17844, as shown in the staff report dated May 1st, 2019.
Thank you. Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, Rogers Communications would like to affix a number of cellular antennas and a microwave antenna on top of the building located at 320 Alexander Street Northeast. The agent is Medallion Wireless, and represented for that company is Marshall Rasmussen, who's here today. A number of years ago, not too long ago, the city adopted a policy regarding consultation when companies like Rogers and TELUS want to install cell towers. Antennas is a more technical term. And with the policy that we have, this proposal falls within the policy, but no consultation is required because the height of the antennas would be under 3 meters and attached to an existing structure, in this case a building. The height extension would only be 17.5% of the building height instead of 25% or more. So what's happening with this is, I guess this is a courtesy, and this is a for information, and that is what our policy asks for in this case. The company could go ahead and put what is being proposed here on the roof without coming to us, but they have chosen to follow our policy, and that's why they are here today.
Great, thank you very much. Russell, did you want to come forward and talk to us a bit? So do you have anything you'd like to add to the director's report?
No, I thought it was very well written. It covered everything. It's a minor installation that fits both within your policy and the federal policy governing these installations.
Great, thank you. I'll just see if there's any questions that council might have. Council, do you have any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Council, do you have any questions for staff? Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you to staff, what happens after this step?
As far as the city's concerned, after this step, we're not involved anymore.
So does it come to council, the council meeting?
Your Worship, it doesn't have to come to council.
Okay.
Thanks, Your Worship. I do have a comment when it's appropriate.
Okay, we'll just move to Councillor Flynn, see if he has a question.
Yeah, I'm just not clear on the motion because there was a mover and a seconder, and the recommendation just says that we've been notified, so I don't know what we're voting on. Are we voting on that we've been notified?
Okay, that's a good question. Let's just get clarity from the Chief Administrative Officer, because it is an informational piece. Chief Administrative Officer, could you just comment on the motion?
Yes, it's just to clarify that the city has been notified.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments by council? Councillor Wallace-Richmond?
Thanks, Your Worship. I have heard through the business community that there was some concerns of a big structure on that building, but it seems to me that it's smaller than the expectation was, so I'm pleased to see that, and if nothing further is required, I'm happy to support the motion that I've been informed, I guess. There's really kind of no teeth to this thing, but it's okay. I'm okay with that.
All right, thank you. Councillor Eliason?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. We did a lot of work on cell towers and cell tower installations. So when the developer comes or the applicant comes and asks to work with us, staff's already done all of the work, and so the planning and development staff have done this all before. So it does meet what we put in the many hours after public consultation. I believe we've approved 3 cell towers since in my time here, maybe more, but the increasing demands of connectivity for both of our residents with their cell phones and our visitors in the summertime, I think that adding more to the downtown core is very important. So I will support this, and I thank them for notifying us, and so we can write a letter saying that we have been notified and we know what's going on. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Okay, thank you for coming and being here this morning, and also thank you to Rogers for letting us know what the plan is. I think the key part here is it's within our policy, and obviously you've looked at our policy, and so that makes any decision for council very easy. Council, I'd ask you to cast your eyes out that window right there. That's part of the picture in the informational package. On top of the fire department are, I'm not sure what they are exactly, some type of communication devices, but those are significantly higher than the ones that we're talking about now. And when you go upstairs and look across, I'm sure some of you did, you see these ones, the ones that we're proposing here are quite low, and I don't think will be very noticeable at all. So I will support it. All those in favor? Thank you. All right, we'll go to item number 3. 2018 City of Salmon Arm Carbon Neutral Progress Survey, and it's great to have Chris here today because he's the expert. I need a motion from the floor. Councillor Lavery, thank you. Councillor Eliason, second. I'll have the CEO read the motion.
Moved by Councillor Lavery, second by Councillor Eliason, that the Development and Planning Services Committee recommends to Council that the 2018 City of Salmon Arm Climate Action Carbon Neutral Progress Survey indicate that the city is eligible for recognition from the Green Communities Committee as a Level 3 Accelerating Progress Local Government, and that the city will not be carbon neutral for the 2018 reporting year, and further that the 2018 Climate Action Carbon Neutral Progress Survey be received as information.
Great, thank you very much. Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. So we're now in year 10 of this program, where we elected to join on the Climate Action Initiative back in 2008. And each year we report on our corporate greenhouse gas emissions from our fleets and from our buildings. And over the last 5 years, 6 years, Chris next to me here has been putting this report together annually. And a lot of you have seen this report. It's pretty much the same report with different numbers in it. This year we did not achieve zero emissions. But that is not to say that we're not trying, or it's not on our mind or conscious to reduce emissions where we can. I believe that staff at the senior level have come a long way in putting our minds together each year to come up with ideas, and some of those ideas are listed in the report of things that we can do using some of the rebate, the carbon tax rebates that we have been successful in obtaining each year, and we have been recognized by the province as a community that is accelerating in our efforts, Level 3. And that's the second highest level that a municipality can achieve. Most municipalities in BC have signed on to this program, of the 180 or so local governments, and most of those local governments have not achieved carbon neutrality. It is very rare for a local government to be able to achieve that, and most of the local governments that have achieved that have unique circumstances. They're either very small in size, geographical size and population, and or they have landfills where they can claim carbon capture credits, such as the CSRD. We don't have that. We do have a very large forest surrounding us, which is a carbon sink, but we can't account for the forest either, unfortunately. But as far as our corporate emissions goes, there is a graph in the report on page 2 which shows that our production was 2,061.8 tons, approximately 40 tons, a very small percentage less than the year before. So we did decline a little bit in our emissions, and some of the capital projects that we have been investing in, which have coincided nicely with what we need, is 2 hybrid vehicles purchased last year for our fleet, and we have 2 more on the way very soon. I realize that one hybrid vehicle in the fleet in this overall 2,000 ton emission equation is very minor, but it's something, and it shows that we are thinking about it and working towards it. I'd also like to mention the work that goes in this report is quite intense behind the scenes. We have in the city over 1,020 bills and 163 accounts that Chris goes through each one and enters all the data into various programs in Excel. And some of those programs are quite interesting because they convert wattage usage from hydro into greenhouse gas emissions. So there's a conversion involved with that. And Chris spends a good solid 2 to 3 weeks on this. So our efforts in the planning department and within the city, the efforts are there, and I'm proud of what's been done.
Great, thank you very much. I wonder if Chris wants to add anything before I open it up to questions.
Thanks, Your Worship. I don't have anything to add to the director's report. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Lavery.
Thanks, Your Worship, and through you to staff. So thanks, Chris, for all the work, and I appreciate, and I know it comes forward each year, but I appreciate the structure of the report to council. I think taking in what's done historically, what staff bases their thinking on in terms of some of the previous studies that are done, and where we go now. Excuse me, my first question is, this will come back to council for ratification, is that true?
Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, yes, this report and recommendation and motion does have to come back to council for a formal resolution, which would go to the province, the Ministry of Environment, along with attestation by our Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. Continue.
Your Worship, so I two general comments and a question, and I'll say most of my comments, I think, when it comes in front of council. Perhaps we'll have a larger gallery at the time there. So the first one is when we do approve it, just to get it referred to the EAC, I think it's really important that they not only the staff report, but the provincial reporting behind it. Secondly, and as the report points out, this is highly dependent on weather as well, but similar to the province, we've had a notable increase in population. So our figures are kind of bubbling up and down a little bit while our population is increasing. And I think it's really important to, it still doesn't get us out of the dilemma that the whole world is in, really, about how do we decarbonize, but I think that population factor is pretty significant. I do have one question through you, Your Worship, and perhaps it might be for the Director of Engineering. Excuse me. I'm interested, and I should know this, and I've heard it, but I can't remember it, in terms of our corporate fleet and the vehicle fleet of our contractors. Are any, or how many of our vehicles are CNG powered, and is CNG powered an option as a transition of something that we're looking at?
Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Your Worship, currently we only have the 2 hybrid vehicles in our fleet, and I'm not aware of any contractors that are using those technologies. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think that was what I thought, and I think it'll be down the line an interesting discussion as other local governments not only again as a transition move, not only move to CNG in some with their fleets, but there are also federal programming initiatives to convert to CNG as a transition as well. So it's just something that that's not a criticism at all in the least, but in terms of options going forward. So I'm kind of just starting doing a little research on that, but I'd certainly maybe if staff hears, and I know staff monitors funding opportunities, but if there is the window there to do that, it'd behoove us to take a close look at it. Thank you, and thanks for the report.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Worship. So the landfill, as I understand it, all the credits for all the great work being done there go to the CSRD for their carrot.
Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, I might ask Chris if that's okay, if he can speak to that one.
Certainly, and he can step in there whenever you like.
Thanks, Your Worship. That's correct.
And I'm hoping it's not a double whammy for us, but the regional airport that is regional, does that show up? I didn't see it in the report. Hopefully that's attributed to them because they get all those great offsets for the landfill right beside it. And if they don't need all their offsets, I understand from previous presentations of this, they can't be transferred to the city where the gases are being captured.
Okay, so two questions there. First, the airport one, then the second one.
My understanding of the airport is that it may not be covered by the CARET program as I believe aviation falls under sort of federal, under the federal umbrella. With respect to the second question, Your Worship, I could use a reminder of what that second question was before I...
Basically, because of the work done at the landfill, I believe the CSRD is one of those unusual examples that is carbon neutral because they get so many credits and they don't have the recreational facilities, which are our biggest, and they're not responsible for transportation. So I can see regional districts being able to do this much easier. If they have extra credits, can we not get them?
Through Your Worship, in the past, we've been able to buy them directly through the regional districts. I believe under the CARET program that the additional credits are now under the purview of the province, and they will act as an agent essentially for those additional carbon credits and their distribution.
Okay. Don't have to buy them anymore.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Lavery.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, for a second shot at this, and Councillor Flynn's question reminded me. So we don't get credit for our contribution, this has been long-standing, for our contribution to the landfill, our contribution of garbage to the landfill and methane. We had every indication going forward, and I've heard it unofficially from CSRD, and I think from staff here. Has it been confirmed that we will indeed get credit for curbside organics for our portion when it goes through? And if we're still unsure, I think that we need to be sitting down at the table about that really directly. We should have had that, in my view, we should have had that credit before when the landfill situation was identified way back when. But definitely as we're entering into this one now, I think that it needs to be attributed to our load. So through Your Worship, do we have a confirmation that it'll be attributed? The GHG emission reduction, which is essentially minimizing methane, will go to the city of Salmon.
We'll pass that through to staff.
Your Worship, at this point, we do not have any agreement. We are just the collectors. The end product ends up going to the depot, and from there it is dealt with through the CSRD. So I would assume that that credit will go to the regional district as opposed to the city.
So as a follow-up, Your Worship,
Yes,
thanks.
please.
I know about a year ago asking the CSRD, and it was not an official answer, but they are aware of the issue. I do think that we need to confirm this, and I'm not sure if both our representatives of CSRD can ask that, as well as perhaps staff asking that directly to CSRD staff as well. We're paying the cost of doing this, and it seems to me that the credits, the carbon emission credits associated with that, should go to us. And for me, this is a pretty significant point, and that the reductions associated with curbside organics tend to be the largest dent in GHG reductions. And I'm pretty sure, it's not an exhaustive study, but I believe in other jurisdictions, it goes to whoever's paying the bill and creating the product.
Okay, we can, I know that our CSRD reps have heard that, and I see Councillor Eliason's up next, so thank you for raising it. Councillor Eliason.
Yeah, I appreciate us looking for every credit or every offset we can. Just to clarify, we do not have to purchase carbon credits to create or to achieve carbon neutrality at this time. Through you to staff, please.
Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, Councillor Lyson is correct. We do not have to achieve carbon neutrality in order to receive the rebate.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we're looking for is a feel-good story in the credits and getting all the credits and collecting all the Pokemon coins. But in actual fact, we are doing the exact right thing without receiving the credit or without receiving the benefit, because this council is showing leadership in achieving greenhouse gas reduction. So if I pass you the puck and you score the goal, our team still scores the goal. And so I know that we're paying for it, and I know that it'd be nice because in the long term, if we can get those offsets, but we have to focus on doing the right thing, which is leadership, which is getting to carbon neutrality. And there is no financial penalty in the way of us being forced to pay for it or being forced to buy credits, and we still get the grant at this point. So while I agree with the long-term thinking, I say, excellent work, guys. Let's keep it up. Let's keep doing what we're doing. Let's keep building trails. Let's keep the recycling going. Let's keep offsetting. Let's try and get those credits. But at the end of the day, we're doing the right things to take the right steps. And that's what this report is about. Let's go with that in mind. And if we don't get those, it just makes us work harder. So, you know, the hybrid vehicles, the solar projects, right? Let's go with that. Let's set the example for the community. Let's do the right thing, and let's lead by doing the right thing. And if we get the credits, great. If we don't get the credits, it's not the end of the day. Let's keep on the same path.
Thank you, Councillor Lyson, and I certainly understand that piece. I guess I'm not sure if it's Councillor Lavery's concern, but my worry is that the rules change and that we have to become carbon neutral, and we don't have those offsets. That maybe should be ours.
And that's why I said it'd be great, but let's keep doing the things to get us to carbon neutrality. And I know this one's a big piece of low-hanging fruit, and you want to pick that apple. But if we don't get it or we can't get it, I mean, we can argue all the time on that. But let's just keep doing the work.
Okay, Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. I know many communities are talking about free transit to reduce their GHGs, and I wondered if within this framework there's any way to calculate the free rides that we give our youth, because I know in my world that's a major reducer of GHGs, but it's also not a city operation to move kids around a community.
Okay, we could ask Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, at this time, I don't believe that our transit system is relevant, even though it is completely relevant. I agree that it is, but it isn't as far as this program goes.
Okay, thanks. And then if you don't mind, one more question. Another big initiative for us is the stopping the use of single-use plastic bags. Would that be something we might see in the next iteration of this report?
Your Worship, this is entirely up to the province on what we can record and account for. And hopefully plastic bags will be in that equation.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for raising those, Councillor Wallace-Richmond. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Worship. And I have no intent with the questions I'm asking for us to stop doing what we're doing. I just want to make it clear that as this becomes more important, and as the government decides to charge people who aren't carbon neutral, there's going to be an issue. And to me, we lobby all levels of government all the time through many places, including SILGA. And to me, we need to be lobbying to make sure the measuring and the credits are given to the people who are earning them. And that's what I want to work on. I think the report is great. But as Councillor Lavery said, the fact we don't get credit for perhaps our recycling when nobody else in the regional district is doing it, and if the regional district's getting credit, that's not fair or right. So we have time while we're not getting charged to work on making it right. That's why I'm asking the questions. But great report, thank you. And there's a lot of inequities in there.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. And if you and Councillor Lyson would ask the questions, I think that probably would be where we would want to start. Okay, any other comments on this report? Okay, I have just a couple. I enjoy getting this report every year because I think this is my 10th one and I think I'm starting to get it. So the way I understand it is the grant is equal to the amount that the city pays in carbon tax each year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm one step ahead of last year then. I got that part. Okay, and the question I asked last year, and I still haven't quite understood it, is I know of the cities and regional districts, and Councillor Flynn explained well why regional districts are more likely to be carbon neutral. But of the about 50, about 30% of those 50 are actually carbon neutral, and about 70% buy offsets to make them carbon neutral. The part I can't figure out is why would a city buy carbon offsets to be carbon neutral? What is the benefit to the city to do that, besides feeling good about being carbon neutral?
Your Worship, my personal opinion, and I could be wrong, is it's about feeling good. It's about the feel-good factor of being carbon neutral. Even if they are producing the emissions, if they buy the offsets, those municipalities or local governments may be putting themselves in a position of achieving carbon neutrality, even if they haven't.
That's what it looks like to me. So my conclusion is that those 70% probably have pretty small amounts of carbon offsets to purchase, because if it was a large financial outlay, I don't think they would do it. Now, this is just supposition on my part, but...
And Your Worship, we have been using the rebate for purchasing energy efficiency in our infrastructure and our fleets. So we are investing in greenhouse gas reductions.
Yeah, and I think, I remember at budget with Councillor Lavery was leading that preservation of monies for particular items, and I appreciate that, and I think Council did as well. And I also thought about the population factor that was brought up by Councillor Lavery, and the fact that we are, maintaining or reducing slightly despite our population gaining. So that is not you don't measure that piece, but if you didn't work at it and your population increased, then your carbon would increase as well. So that's not a measurable piece. The other thing I just wanted to talk about was the chart on the bottom of page 2, I guess. And maybe I should wait till a council meeting, but this is the part I think for the public trying to understand all this probably is not that easy. But I think it's important for them to understand the emissions piece. My first question about this is through to the Director of Engineering and Public Works. The drinking storm and wastewater emissions, is that to operate and maintain the building?
Your Worship, that's the overall operations. That's pumps, motors, fuel for vehicles. It's essentially the overall operations, and the same for roads and transportation. It's the snow plows. It's the fuel. I don't know if Chris can add anything, but I think that's pretty much what it is.
Okay, appreciate that. So maybe Chris knows this, that for the drinking storm and wastewater, is the majority come from the operation of the plants, or is it like 50-50 between that and vehicles and things like that?
There's a slightly more detailed breakdown in Appendix 2,
Okay.
page 66 of the agenda.
Oh yes, I remember seeing this.
Your Worship, if I could add, so we had an audit done on our facilities, wastewater, water treatment plant, and the majority of our pumps within the facilities are all VFD, variable frequency drive. So they're a soft start pump, so it uses less energy, less electricity to start. Right now, we were considered as a peak high efficiency operation. But of course, we have a lot of elevation in our community, so we have to pump our water. And so the electrical usage is up. There's also fuel costs. But the treatment plants are large, so there is a large usage coming out of those.
Great, and thank you for that breakdown. I had looked at it earlier, and it is very useful. If we could just go back to that first one again. Here we are. Thank you very much. So, when the public looks at this, you know, there's none of these things that you'd say, okay, let's leave that one out because we can decrease our emissions. That's the whole point. Like, if we want to have fresh water and we want to treat our water and have storm, there's going to be some emissions there. And if we're going to move the snow and clean the roads and do those kind of things, there's going to be emissions. We know that to operate our SASCU and our rec center, there's 900 tons of emissions, but the option is to not operate it. And of course, that's not a good option. Or it's the same for all of these. These things are all essential. So I think we're doing a good job in trying to lessen our emissions through small things. But we can't just say, hey, we're going to leave that out, and that's going to save us a whole bunch. So it's not, you know, and our footprint of 2,000 tons to do all of that, I think comparative-wise, when you look at the comparisons, is pretty impressive. So appreciate all of the work that's done, and I will vote to move this forward. Councillor Lavery.
Yes, thank you, Worship, for the third time here. It's more just a riff off of your legitimate, and I agree, questions about offsets. So in our previous term, chairing the EAC, lots of discussion about offsets. It was really clear across that table, and I think it was at ours as well, that purchasing offsets to go out of the municipality is not the way to go, and is more of a feel-good option. I do think, though, that there are two other associated ideas that come out with offsets that are both internal, and we hear them, and we hear them periodically, and I suspect we'll hear them again. And the first one is to invest in offsets in a project within the civic boundaries that this table would view as being worthwhile, and I have to double check on it. I think our purchasing offsets was about $30,000, something along there. So to leverage that to get a project going and to invest offsets that way. And then the other one, and it's a more radical idea, and one or two local governments are doing it, is to actually, for the corporation to tax itself if it's not meeting carbon neutrality. So that if we are, and it's kind of an offset idea as well, if we are $30,000, and I'm not advocating for this at this stage, but I think these ideas pop up periodically. If you are $30,000 below carbon neutrality, tax this and put it into a reserve and to go forward. And I'm not advocating for that at this stage, but those are the other two offset ideas that tend to crop up fairly regularly, periodically. They often get conflated with other ideas, but it's the offset idea of investing internally is where a lot of thinking is right now.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers before we vote on the motion? Thank you, staff, first of all, for your work, and council for your questions and comments. Okay, also those in favor? Thank you. I don't think we have any other information. We have a motion to adjourn.
Moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Wallace-Richmond, that the Development Planning Services Committee meeting of May 6, 2019 be adjourned.
All those in favor? Thank you very much, everyone.
File this report for